Alright, quick video on why I quit drinking and just about alcohol in general, really. I'll probably do more videos on this in future because it's quite a big topic, but yeah. So I used to drink a lot, and I never actually fully got sober until recently when I quit weed. You might have seen my videos about quitting weed, which I did about a month ago, maybe a bit more, and I decided then I was just going to quit weed, tobacco and alcohol. I wasn't drinking much at that point anyway, but previously, years before, I said that a little bit like the guy who does previews on shows like Breaking Bad. Years before, I used to drink heavily, and I didn't, like I said back then, I didn't sort of quit fully. I kind of just, cut back massively and basically stopped drinking. I stopped drinking every day, and I sort of said to myself I wasn't going to go teetotal, but I would just not really drink anymore. And many reasons for that. To summarise, I suppose, it was really bad for my mind. It made me into not a very nice person. Physically, very unhealthy. A lot of weight gain, stuff like that. Expensive, not very conducive to like a productive lifestyle. And one of the worst things for me was it was a big time gateway drug. It always people talk about weed being a gateway drug and rarely alcohol, which is very strange because you very rarely get stoned and want to take other drugs. Usually when you're stoned, you just want to smoke weed and that's it. You don't want to like do other stuff. You don't smoke weed and suddenly think like, oh, it'd be really fun. Let's get some cocaine. It sounds horrible when you're stoned. In fact, if anything, I'd say being stoned puts you off doing other drugs more even than if you were sober. This reflection on my glasses is a little bit annoying, but I can't really do anything about it. Yeah, you just have to pretend I have weird sort of green alien eyes. But I think culturally weed is a gateway drug, like because you start hanging out with people who, fucking take drugs and stuff, and you get used to breaking the law in a sense and taking illegal substances. Let me shimmy over a little bit. Oh, it's not going to go. No matter where I go, it will just follow me. Fucking hell. It's like one of those scary paintings. Yeah, so I think it would, weed makes you maybe more likely to associate with people who take drugs, and then you sort of think like, oh, well, if my parents lied to me about weed and my teachers lied to me about weed, then maybe they lied to me about MDMA and cocaine and fucking everything else too. But alcohol for me was a big time gateway drug. I would, every time, oh man, I have one beer, and then one beer would always just loosen me up enough where I wanted two beers. And then two beers definitely was going to be free beers. And once it was free beers, usually at two really, but 2 or 3 beers, I just fucking had to have drugs. Like I wanted to get MDMA or cocaine or just like anything really. And me and my ex, we were going through quite a dark time about 6 years ago. Maybe a bit more or less, I don't know, about 6 years ago. And 7 years ago, in fact. And around then, it was really bad. We used to do MDMA almost every weekend, often kind of like, it was more my idea. And, I would get drunk and I would become like very hostile. Like I'd really want to buy drugs and I'd just be like really like, sort of like, I just wouldn't stop talking about it. And I would try and like manipulate the situation so that we would buy drugs, and try and like, it's because I'm not wearing my normal glasses. I'm wearing I'm wearing the pair that I wear for exercise. Look at that. Oh no, it's still there. Sort of. It's not as bad. I don't know why, because they don't have like glare protection on them. These ones. Just never hold a pair of glasses like that. It's like when someone holds a laptop by the lid. My friend did that at my house once. He he grabbed my girlfriend's laptop by the lid and just like held it up. And we both screamed. We were like, "No!" He tried to carry it across the room like motherfucking thing. Yeah, so I would get very emotionally intense, you know, and there'd be a weird vibe, and I was just like, oh, we should pick up, let's get drugs, you know, we should fucking get some drugs, why not? Sometimes this would be on a weeknight, and I'd be like, fuck it, like, let's just take the day off, and I'd just go crazy. It would just bring out all these demons, bring out all this bad stuff, this like anger and hatred and pain, and sometimes I was very unpleasant, and just put me in a real narcissistic, emotional state. And it went on for ages. And the problem with alcohol, and the reason people get so addicted to it, is because the more you drink, the worse you feel in general. And then the only thing that you're used to that makes you feel better is alcohol. So you think you need alcohol in order to feel better. And you don't. You need to stop drinking in order to feel better. I'm not talking about people who have fun at the weekend with their friends and are living a fun lifestyle and are happy. But if you're unhappy and you drink, you should not be drinking. It just doesn't, you know, it's, unless it's, you know, unless you drink a tiny amount, obviously I'm not, you know, but like it also has something, it's referred to as the kindling effect, where the more you drink and the more hangovers and sort of withdrawal that you experience, the more pronounced that effect becomes. So, and it's accumulative. There's nothing you can do about that. It's the same with a number of drugs. It's the same with drugs that work on the GABA receptors. I can't remember what they're... but like things like Phenibut and GHB, and I think a lot of drugs have... I mean, clearly so many of them do, just from kind of, you know, observing how you feel on them. But alcohol particularly has this. So that's why people always say, oh, hangovers get much worse when you get older. They don't get worse when you get older. They get worse when you've been abusing alcohol for years. And so people who've barely drunk anything in their life and they're older, say they're 50, their hangovers aren't going to be too terrible. The people who have really bad hangovers when they're 50 or 60, they're just fucking pounding themselves. It's really... It's seriously harmful for your brain over time. And I think because I was hitting a lot of those different drugs at once, it got to a point where it didn't matter if I wasn't drinking much, didn't matter that I stopped. Like, the reason I stopped recently was because I would find I'd have 1 or 2 beers and I'd feel horrible. And that would happen almost immediately. Like, I'd have it and I'd just be like... Again, all this shit would come out, you know, like this pain, and I just thought, like, what is this about, you know, like, it's just, it never did much good for me. The only good thing alcohol ever did was it gave me confidence to record music that I probably should have just learned sober. It gave me confidence to practice. Never did anything else. Never did anything for me socially. I always made a fucking tit of myself when I was at school and stuff. Always made an absolute fucking tit of myself. And had I been sober, there were a couple of people who were sober. Like, it was, you know, it was kind of strange. Like, there were a couple of people who just like never drank. They were sort of normal. They just didn't drink. And like, it wasn't a big deal. You know, I'm sure they felt left out quite a lot of times, but they also never suffered the complete humiliation of, you know, like, some of the stuff I did when I was drunk at school. And, not drunk at school, I wasn't that bad, you know. Going to class hammered or anything. I mean, I used to fucking go to school stoned every day, but that's a bit different. Yeah, it never is. The social thing, it's like, I don't know, maybe that is, you know, maybe it's a really integral part of your social life, but if it is, then it might not be that strong of a social life, or it might not be that important. It's something that is, I just don't feel you should be beholden to anything in that way. So if it's like, if I stop drinking, I won't have any friends anymore. I don't want to say the thing like, oh, then they're not your real friends, because I'm sure they are. But do you really want to be beholden to that? You want to be a prisoner of alcohol for your whole life. When will that stop? If that's forever the case, are you just going to drink heavily forever, even if it makes you depressed or poor or fat or anything else? Like, surely you have to draw a line somewhere at some point. If it's a problem for you. So the social thing, I think, is kind of bullshit, and I don't know how much it does for people socially. Yeah, it gives you confidence for like an hour, and then you just become a wanker, or you just start to feel like shit, and everyone is weird and annoying and insincere, and it turns you into a different person. So fuck all this bullshit people say as well of like, your real feelings come out when you're drunk. Your real feelings are just whatever. I mean, like, most people are perfectly capable of experiencing their real feelings when they're not drunk. Well, maybe not, but it's bullshit. Do your real feelings come out when you're on LSD? Do your real feelings come out when you smoke DMT? Are your real feelings all about genies and fucking geometric patterns? Do your real feelings come out when you're stoned? Do your real feelings come out when you're on meth and you want to fucking go and like steal a car and shit? Like, what does that even mean? Your real feelings come out when you're drunk? Sure, some of them do. It exacerbates certain emotions and makes you say certain things you might not. The same way if you smoke weed, you feel insecure sometimes about things that maybe you already do feel insecure about, and it massively magnifies it. But it's bullshit to try and pretend that our real personality is the person that comes out when we're fucking drunk. That's nonsense. That's fucking old wives' tales, mate. It's bollocks. Some of your real feelings obviously do come out, but what was I saying? So I have a weird OCD about touching my nose to the microphone. I don't know if that's visible on the camera. I realised suddenly how weird that was to do on camera. I'm not by myself. Yeah. I'm beginning to realise I have... I don't want to be one of those people who says I have OCD just because I have some weird quirks. I'm pretty certain I have OCD. I have some fucking strange tendencies. Real strange. Yeah, so it's not, most of it is not your real feelings. Most of it is bollocks. Think of the things you say when you're drunk. They're fucking ridiculous. Like, if those are your real feelings, then you're an idiot. And just don't drink. Just hide your real feelings, because most of the stuff people say when they're drunk is fucking ridiculous and terrible. When you're sober and you're around drunk people, think of the times when you're sober and you're around drunk people. It's fucking awful. It's a nightmare. When you're drunk and you're around a sober person, it's fine, really. Like, like, oh, you're great. When you're sober and you're around drunk people, every single one of them is a fucking idiot. Like, you just hate them. They're unbearable. So if that's your real feelings, then just give up. Just bury them, bury them under sobriety. But it's not. It's usually a bunch of just bullshit anyway. And that's how people socialise. People have friends they see at work all day and they don't really speak to each other, and they're like, and then they go out on the weekend and they have these like crazy nights and they say all this crazy shit and all this crazy shit happens and they act in ways they wouldn't normally act. And then the next Monday they're like, oh, that was mad. And then they go back to being all shy and quiet. What's that? What kind of culture is that? Like, that's fucking... Yeah. It's not on. And so many cultures are built around that. Binge drinking culture, sorry. Not binge drinking. South Korea, funnily enough, is the worst for that. They're through the roof with binge drinking. They drink so much. I didn't realise this is this doesn't really serve my point very well. I mean, because they're a very, very, very functional society and economy. And it's a great place, South Korea. Strange that it borders, North Korea. Well, not strange geographically that South Korea would border North Korea, obviously, but just strange given how different those two nations are. It's strange that North Korean people have some of the highest IQs in the world, and they're trapped in this fucking nightmarish regime. I mean, it's just terrible. It's terrible that no one does anything about that. But anyway, definitely not the point of this video. South Koreans binge drink like crazy, but it is a problem. It's just, it hasn't destroyed their whole society, because they're pretty good in other ways, and you can definitely have a thriving economy and a very successful society without doing that. Just forget South Korea. Forget I mentioned South Korea. In England, anyway, there's a big binge drinking culture. South Koreans could just handle their booze differently or something. They're just more mature. In England, there's a big, binge drinking culture, and it just seemed that way. Like, people were just couldn't be themselves normally. And what I'm trying to do now, recently, I stopped, because the only reason I would ever drink now is never for fun or for pleasure. In recent years, there's two reasons. One is just if I'm at a social event and I feel uncomfortable, I'll have like a beer or two, and I don't really get that crazy drug urge if I do that, especially now, just older and whatever. And two, and also I used to kind of tell my ex-girlfriend, sort of, she would kind of she was pretty good about that. Like, she got used to my fucking deranged addict personality. And two would be if I was actually planning on doing cocaine or something, because not that I would recommend it, but alcohol and cocaine combine in a way that is quite pleasurable. But just don't. Anyway, there's much better things to do. There really is much better things to do, and much cheaper. Ooh. Especially you live in Australia, where it's like 300 Aussie dollars a gram. I don't know what an Aussie dollar is worth, but I think it's about the same as a regular dollar, a US dollar. Yeah, so, hey, then again, if you're in Colombia or Mexico, a very cheap night out, some cocaine and beers. Relative to, average wages, perhaps not. Yeah. Anyway, so that would be the only reason. And for the social part, the feeling of feeling anxious at a social event, I think it's better to learn to be comfortable enough to not need to have a drink to go to a social event, and rather than being dependent on this thing, to make you feel relaxed and then just ill and get hammered, and it just, I don't know. Yeah, it was just, for me, it was easier personally at this point, even though it's not a problem anymore, just to draw a line under it, because I did the line too early there, so I had to do a second line. But yeah, I probably should have done that earlier. When I had a real problem with it, I should have probably just fully drawn a line under it and gone sober back then. But I don't know. I don't always necessarily believe in being teetotal with things. I don't always agree with it as a strategy, and I think it's a bit, for some people, I think it's a bit, I don't know. I don't think it's right for everyone. I don't think everyone has to get teetotal, has to go teetotal when they get off something. I think, it sort of depends really on the situation. Some people definitely should. But yeah, you just learn to feel more comfortable anyway, and you just, it's just a skill you have to learn. That's something you have to practice. Well, think about it when you're a kid. I mean, maybe it's different for some people. I remember my first day at nursery, to be fair, the other kids didn't seem to be having this problem, but I couldn't I just couldn't speak to anyone. I was just hiding behind my mum, and I couldn't and I was just so. And then you just you have to just grab. To be fair, I mean, thinking about it, I never fully. It took a long time for me to get over that sort of shyness and stuff. So maybe it's a bad example, but you kind of start out pretty shy when you're a kid. You start out socially uncomfortable, and you sort of get better, generally speaking. Some people kind of go the opposite way, I suppose. Maybe a bad example, but it is something that can be learned, regardless. Much like the South Korea thing, forget I use that example, but it is something that can be learned, clearly. There are people who learn it. There are people who learn this fucking dirty pickup artist shit, and they're dweebs, and they learn this fucking juju mumbo jumbo fucking mind game bullshit, and they do confidence exercises, they practice and there's people these motivational speakers and stuff who they used to people practice confidence is what I'm trying to say. It's a skill, and feeling relaxed and stuff is a skill that you can practice. Same as a sport or a form of exercise or anything else. So you can fucking learn that without alcohol. You can learn to like replace it. There's plenty of very fun sober people. That was what helped as well. I was thinking like, you know, like Russell Brand is sober, Theo Von is sober, like they don't have any problems. They're probably a lot more fun than most people if you like hang out with them. They're probably a lot more fun than most like normal drunk people you meet. So it's entirely possible to not drink and to, you know, have fun. It's not, I won't pretend that part is totally easy because, you know, yeah, people are often going to be weird towards you or not want you around, or, you know, it's a bit strange. And if everyone's absolutely fucking hammered and you're there sober, it's like, it's almost a bit creepy, you know? It's like, even if you're not going to like try and shag any of them, it's just a bit creepy, you know? Even just talking to them, it's almost like, it's like you're doing some weird, you know, you're sort of Iago from Othello, and they're all the other characters in Othello. That's being generous. It's like they're all babies and you're a grown-up, you know? It's like just hanging out with them is a bit wrong. But it depends on the nature of your social life. You know, if you're younger and everything's about like getting absolutely wrecked and stuff, then yeah, it's tricky and you might have to find other things to do. But if you're older and it's still about that, then, you know, fucking maybe it shouldn't be. And there's a lot of drugs and substances and things you can do that are not so detrimental to your mind and body, and are really fun, and there's more variety to them. It's not just the same thing of like depending on alcohol every weekend, people getting fucking smashed. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'll probably do a lot more videos on alcohol in future. Hopefully where I don't have this weird fucking green shit in my eyes, which I'm also sort of trying to like line up perfectly so it covers both my eyes. It's weird. They're kind of moving independently of each other, you know? It's all falling apart. I can't even get the fucking green things on both my eyes. I'm a failure. I should ring up my mum crying. Yeah. So, I just wanted to cover that eye as well. No, sorry. Yeah, I'll fucking probably more on this in future because, as I say, it's a very big topic. But cutting the actually important thing I wanted to say is that I can't believe I've taken 23 minutes and I haven't even said this. But at the time, I was so dependent on alcohol. And the thought of quitting was like, I couldn't fathom it. It was like, no way. I need alcohol to exist. I need alcohol in order to be happy. I will fucking die if I try and quit. And now, I don't even like it. I don't like it. I don't enjoy the feeling of it. I think it's shit. I just think it's so overrated. It's not a fun feeling compared to other substances. It's just like, I find it to be very toxic and horrible, really, for the most part. And I don't like the way other people are on it, generally speaking. Sometimes people are very funny, obviously, when they're drunk. And sometimes the experience is pretty funny, but yeah. It's just crazy how when you're addicted to something, your brain will tell you that you need it and that you have to have it and that you can't be happy without it, you can't cope without it. It's like a fucking coercive, abusive partner in your brain, you know, telling you like you're nothing without alcohol. And it's bullshit. It's complete fucking bullshit. Like, it just is complete bullshit. The feeling of being sober, the feeling now of not being imprisoned by it is so nice. Every time I think of it, I just think like it actually gives me pleasure and satisfaction just to think about the fact that I don't need to drink anymore. That just makes me happy. Like, it gives me genuine comfort, which is way better than what I got from alcohol. And it destroys your sleep as well. Completely destroys your sleep, which then means you feel terrible the next day. You haven't got any fucking serotonin going on and you need to drink more. and it's all gone. All of that shit is gone. I lost so much weight as soon as I quit. And when you drink, that you don't absorb food properly if you eat afterwards. If you eat when you're drunk, so everything you put on gets put on as fat, and that's no good, obviously, you know. So yeah, just it will be absolutely fine. No one has ever quit alcohol and said, and I know I've said this before, I'll say it again about a variety of things, but no one has ever quit alcohol and been like, that was a terrible decision. I can't believe I stopped drinking. That was the worst decision of my life. Like, when have you ever heard anyone say that before? When have you ever heard anyone from experience say that quitting or cutting back on alcohol was a bad idea? Never. So if you're thinking about it, just do it. And good luck.